Good evening or good morning or good day wherever you are listening. We have a very, very special cancer conversation. With me is Mitch Marczewski, who is the brother of Jane, the very famous Nightbirde that we're going to be talking about tonight. And she was our patient, and we're going to talk about her life journey and all the intricacies of it. And because I think it's really important to share a message of hope and healing, and how things can turn out different than what you think they might turn out. And if someone gives you a impossible diagnosis that there are no options, trust me, in the invincible universe there are options, and Jane proved that to all of us. So I want to start to have you, Mitch, join us tonight. He has partnered with us. He's been an amazing brother to Jane. And so why don't you tell all of us about her journey and how, because this was not her first bout with breast cancer.
No, it wasn't. So first off, thank you so much for having me tonight. It's just an honor to be here. And I've spent a lot of days and a lot of nights here at the Cancer Center for Healing, and it's been, I will say, my experience here has been nothing but incredible. Dr. Connealy's been wonderful, Daryl, the whole staff. Like every time I even come in, this place is, just better and better and better and better in terms of patient care, in terms of the treatments that they offer, and even in terms of just the whole experience itself. I'm just really blessed to be able to come back and to be a part of really this amazing community. So thank you so much for having us, having me back.
Yes,
for sure. So many of you know Jane from America's Got Talent. Nightbirde got Simon Cowell's Golden Buzzer, then had to drop out obviously because of her health, and she passed away at 31 of breast cancer. And but her journey, I think, is unfortunately, as you probably can attest to, is probably more common now than it really ever has been. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. I think it was in 2017 or 2018 was the first time that she was diagnosed. Right. And she was living in Nashville, Tennessee at the time. And she went through just, your standard treatment regimen, as for a woman that has breast cancer. You go through the chemo, you go through the radiation, do the double mastectomy, and, doctors say, hey, you're in the clear, like you're in remission, you're good to go. And unfortunately that wasn't the case in Jane's case. And so she gets, I'm gonna call it re-diagnosed, I don't know. She gets the news in 2019 that she had only a handful of months to live. It was towards the end of 2019, and then in 2020, like January, we were really reckoning with this news. We were like, what the heck are we gonna do? And really through just a series of really fortunate interactions and friendships and relationships, we found ourselves here in Irvine with Dr. Connealy. And Jane was in rough shape. She was in a rough shape. I don't know if you want to share about how she was when she walked in.
Right. So Jane and I had done a Zoom, and so I didn't fully get to see all of her. But she was able to do the Zoom, and she had told me that her doctor in Vanderbilt said, you have 3 months to live, really, whether you do chemo or not. And I told her, I said, well, if you haven't given up hope, we haven't given up hope on you. So she says, I'm going to get everything together to come out here to California. They arrived in, I think it was January, about 2 months later. And Jane arrived in a wheelchair, about 84 pounds. So the first time I was like, oh, whoa, we need to really just fortify her first. And so that's what we did, is we helped her put on weight, get her nutritionally sound, and because we were going to be starting chemotherapy, not the conventional chemotherapy, but low-dose chemotherapy. And so we got her stronger and stronger and stronger to do that. and we initiated chemotherapy, and Jane had done chemotherapy with all the supportive protocols that we do here. And after 10 weeks of administering chemotherapy, she had a clean PET scan. So she told me, okay, Dr. Connealy, she was so excited and everything was wonderful. And I said, this is a miracle, Jane. And so anyway, she said, Dr. Connealy, I want to finish my divorce. I was married to a man in Nashville and I need to close the chapter there. I want to go home and go and do that. And then I'm going to go visit my family in Ohio. So that's what she did. And she came back here and everything was okay. But I noticed Jane was very anxious. And so I said, Jane, what's going on? And I think the stress of the divorce, that man abandoned her in the worst of times for her. And so I think that was something that she never really got over. But we spent month after month trying to really get her emotions together. So she was doing therapies here. And then why don't you say, what happened?
Yeah, so she, obviously after that, that initial round of, it was IPT or something like that she was doing, I believe. It was incredible. Us getting the clean scan was just mind-blowing, and I will say this, I was 100% one of those people that thought integrative medicine does not work. It is a scam. It's people preying on the dying so that they can make some money before they pass away. I was one of those guys. And even walking into the clinic in late January, early February of 2020, I was a skeptic for sure. I was critical and everything else, and then 10 weeks later, I could not have been proven more wrong on just the effectiveness of a whole body integrative approach that takes the best of all different types of medicine and brings them all together for the good of the person. And so walking away with 10 weeks, of treatment and her going from you're going to die to being completely clean was just an incredible testament to not only the work that we're doing here. I'm just saying I'm part of this, but
it's part of our family.
It's part of our family. That's how I feel. It's just a testament to, just the ability for someone to be able to take a look at something different than what they're used to, and then being able to give it a try and understand that an open mind, is not necessarily a bad thing, especially when it comes to your health. So just first thing I want to say about that whole process. But, Jane walking away from that clean scan to go finalize her divorce, to go home and just sort of get her affairs in order, there was a lot that happened in that time. And it wasn't a lot of really traumatic moments necessarily. It was just she went from, I have to just survive physically. She spent all of her time and energy and effort and prayers and everything going through that 10 weeks. That was all that was on her mind, was just the hope of being able to survive. And then she moves on from the survivability, it's kind of like the layer, the hierarchy of needs almost a little bit of, I'm just trying to survive, to now there's this other thing I have to take care of. And what happened was all of those emotions and all of the frustrations and all of the sadness and all of the abandonments and all of the feeling unloved and unworthy and uncared for, all of that flooded back into her life after she had gotten her diagnosis, or after her prognosis was great. And I think what that pointed to for me was, our health and our emotions and our mental health, our physical health and our mental health and our spiritual health are all so integrated together, I think, and intertwined,
yes.
And so me being able to say, oh my gosh, she was clean scan, and then she goes through all of this, having to deal with all of these emotions and all of the things that she hadn't had to deal with up to this point, really triggered her body back into, a really vulnerable state. And she came back, and she wasn't back where she started, but she was pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah, she was. The emotional part, she really wrestled with that. Mm-hmm. And we did so many different interventions to help her, really get back. So let's go through we can.
Sorry, we just jumped straight into the story. We're skipping all the slides.
Yeah.
I want to share a little bit about what the Cancer Center for Healing does.
Right. So the Cancer Center for Healing was started probably 15 years ago, and my personal interest in cancer was my mother was administered DES when she was pregnant with me. And they found out that drug, DES, diethylstilbestrol, was causing cancer, 15 years later after I was born. And so I started going to MD Anderson Hospital when I was a teenager, getting all kinds of exams and biopsies, and they told me I need to be checked for the rest of my life. And so fortunately, in high school, I loved science and I was good in biology, and then I said, okay, I want to be a doctor, went to college and went to medical school, and my whole life is, how do you not get cancer? And so fortunately, I had all these different mentors in my life that came into my life to teach me a lot of what I'm doing now, and I've taken on what my mentors taught me and teaching so many other practitioners and sharing my message and what I know to the rest of the world. And now Cancer Center for Healing is the largest integrative medical center, and we treat everything from prevention, human optimization of all disease, including cancer, to stage 4 cancers. There are, like Mitch was saying, we integrate so many different healing modalities here. You can go to our website and see. We are constantly evolving because we're constantly learning and learning from doctors all over the world, not just the United States. So we're located in Irvine, one of the safest cities in America, and we're 20 minutes from Laguna Beach, so you'll enjoy California and all the fun things that we get to do here.
For sure.
So I started out 37 years ago, and fortunately I grew up natural in Houston, Texas. My mother was very big proponent of, nursing us and really good eating and sauerkraut and bone marrow and all those things that are fashionable today. That's how I grew up. And then finished my training at Harvard UCLA, I started practicing, and I just was naturally inclined to find what is the most non-toxic therapy that I can provide for my patients, and how do I restore complete health and wellness in each and every patient. And so that was 37 years ago, and I've grown to the million steps that I've personally endured and also professionally, because it wasn't something like I had a primrose path. I've been through my own detours and curveballs that have really enlightened me and opened me to so many other ways of treating patients, which I have brought here. And we have an amazing team of people who are dedicated to the mission of finding the best treatments in the world, and everyone here at this clinic is dedicated to lovingly serve patients, and I think Mitch can attest to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what makes this place so beautiful.
Yeah, I totally agree, Dr. Connealy. It's been the staff and the doctors and everybody here, like, they're just no better people, I don't think. And even my little brother Andrew, who took care of Jane, for many years, he's gone back to school to be a nurse because of the inspiration of the people that served Jane and him here at the clinic. So it's really amazing work. My name is Mitch Marczewski, and I run the Nightbirde Foundation. I'm Jane's big brother. I'm born and raised in Zanesville, Ohio. And Jane and I, obviously, we're about 20 months apart in terms of age, and she and I were just best friends growing up. So, for me to be able to, come alongside of her, after she went through her separation and then divorce, like, it was just a no-brainer for me to make sure that she could stay alive. And she was just my closest friend, and even though we had lots of differences over the years, at the end of the day, like, there's only so much that can separate you, and when you hit a certain point, all those things, they matter much less. I reside now near Columbus, Ohio, with my wife and my 4 little children. I'm 6, 5, 3, and 1. So I'm just living. Living that.
You're busy.
I'm busy.
Busy day.
So busy. So obviously you guys have heard of and seen. If you haven't, we're going to watch the clip. But Jane Nightbirde, who was on America's Got Talent, Simon Cowell, he gave her a golden buzzer for her performance on America's Got Talent, and you really, like, that performance has really become the foundation, ironically, of the Nightbirde Foundation, in the sense that what Jane did on that stage that we're going to watch just in a couple minutes, is she provided, like, hope inspiration, encouragement, and really a mindset of not giving up. So much so that when she walked on that stage, the judges on America's Got Talent were blown away by how somebody who has stage 4 metastatic breast cancer can walk onto a stage and be able to say that she's so much more than the bad things that have happened to her, and that and that 2% chance to live is not zero. So she's going to live that 2% as far and as long and as hard as she can. And that audition, not only did it impact the judges, but it's impacted millions of women all over the world in their own cancer journeys, to know that they don't have to give up when the diagnosis is bad. They don't have to give up when they only are given certain numbers of weeks or days or months or years to live. But just because you have a 2% chance doesn't mean that you have to roll over and take that as your answer, but that you can spend your life adding value, making sure that you can help other people, and that you can bring hope into the world in any way that you can. I'm sure you saw a lot of that even in Jane when you were treating her, right?
Right, absolutely. She just refused to give up, and I love that warrior mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always give her the words. I say, Jane, you have to think invincible, unstoppable, and limitless. I would tell her that.
She would say that to me all the time. Like, she would be down and stuff, and she goes, "You know what, Mitch? Dr. Connealy says, think invincible thoughts. Think invincible thoughts." She would always tell me that, and it was just a part of who she was, and it was so great to hear you encouraging her in that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's watch that video. If you haven't heard of Nightbirde and haven't experienced the hope that comes from it, we hope you enjoy this. Oh my goodness. How do you feel watching that?
I know. It's like stirs lots of emotion.
Yeah, it really does. I watch it probably more often than I want to, and it still gets me, you know, every time.
Yeah.
You know.
Because why don't you talk then? Because, you know, Jane, like, she sang for a lot of her life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. We really grew up singing all the time. My mom was a choir director at a church, so we were there all the time, and we were always singing in the car and singing on the way to school and singing at home, putting on our concerts, you know, on the couch, you know, as the stage and everything else. And you know, one of the things that Jane wanted more than anything, I think, in life, like, it was a dream of hers, was to change the world with her music. That was something that she was consistently just had that in front of her as a dream and as a goal, and she really felt like that was her purpose in life. And as you know, her marriage fell apart, as her cancer got worse, and it really seemed like it wasn't going to happen, you know, but her being able to grab a hold of and hold on to that dream and not give up, and not be I don't know, just not be able to say, you know what, this dream isn't going to happen anymore, so I'm going to give up on it. Really, I think, allowed her to be able to be the woman that she was on that stage. Like, at the end of the day, I think that God really did give her her dream. He was faithful to what he had promised her, and she went from just a girl with cancer, you know, and a broken marriage and not really sure what her future looked like, to an overnight sensation and success, and not because of really anything more than just the fact that she really trusted and believed that, you know, hope is one of the most powerful things that we can have. And she not only had it for herself, but she was able to give it to millions of other people as well through that audition. Now, the Nightbirde Foundation, just to give you a little bit of background on what we do now, after Jane passed away, we set up a 501c3 that helps bring hope and healing to women with breast cancer. And, you know, we formed it obviously in honor of Jane, and really, you know, Jane being the amazing woman that she was, like, we were only able to be here because of the generosity of just thousands and thousands of people all over the world, and that same generosity, you know, we want to continue to pay forward. And one really fun story that, you know, that was kind of really set the tone and the legacy for what we do is, you know, it was about 6 or 7 weeks before Jane passed away. There was a woman here named Elaine who was here, and she was unable to afford the IPT treatments that she needed, and she was going to have to go home, and it was just going to be the end. And she was talking to Jane about it. Jane had become friends with her just being here, sitting and getting treatments and everything. and we find this $20,000 PayPal transfer out of her account. And we thought it was fraud. You know, we called Jane and we're like, what? Somebody in her account, whatever. And she goes, no. A friend here needed the money, and like it was freely given to me, so why would I not freely give it away to somebody else? And you know, weeks before she passed away, she was being generous with what was given to her, and that really set the tone for us moving forward as an organization. Like, not only do we want to be generous with the finances and the funds that we've given, but we also want to be generous with the hope that we have. And so the Nightbirde Foundation partners with women who are going through breast cancer, not only to help them with grants for treatments, but also to give them hope. Because as we know, hope is one of the most powerful things that you can have. And if you walk into a place like this and you're given 6 months to live and you don't believe that you can live, the chances of you living are very slim.
That's right.
But the ability for you to have the hope that the journey is not going to end bleakly, but hope that the journey is going to be full of life and full of love and full of encouragement and full of joy. You know, even if you don't make it all the way through, as long as you want to, those years lived are meaningful. And whether or not you believe, whether or not, you know, your doctors believe that or your friends believe that or not. And Jane, I think, you know, she didn't make it all the way through until she was 50 years old or 60 years old. She didn't get to see my youngest daughter ever. I'm going to grow up without, you know, her wisdom and wit being instilled in my kids. But, you know, she changed the world in 2 years. And it was because of the hope that she had.
Right. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it really was. So I really want to hear from you, and I on this, and we'll talk about it, I guess, later in the slides, but just the power of hope. But one of the things that we do is we send out these gifts of hope. You can see them here, and actually I've got one here as well. We delivered one to a lady here earlier on. Her name's Tiffany, and she's going through her own struggles and her own cancer, and what we do is we give these gifts of hope because there are hundreds and there are thousands, and I would probably even say even millions of women all over the world that are sitting in chemo chairs, they're sitting in treatment centers, and they don't have hope. They don't have a vision for the future. They don't think that they can make it. And what we want to do is we want to take the hope that we have and we want to share it with other women so that they can know that they don't have to give up, that 2% isn't 0%, and that there's so much more than the bad things that have happened to them. So we send out these gift of hope boxes to women that are going through their cancer journey. We distribute them through clinics, but also you can go to our website to sponsor a woman if you'd like to. We'll send it off to anybody that you want, or if you want to just donate, it goes to a woman that doesn't have hope, that's sitting somewhere, that is on the verge of giving up. And we wanted them to know they can be just like Jane, and they can fight a great battle, and they can be encouraged, and they can be hopeful no matter what. Dr. Connealy, why don't you tell us a little bit about just the power of hope from just, because it's really intriguing to me. I'm trying to think how to ask this question. I feel like mental health has become such a buzzword, you know, these days.
It has.
But, you know, at the end of the day, like, talk about the mental and the mental elements of hope, the physiological elements that come along with that. And I think that's just really important for us to hear.
Right, because so much of getting a diagnosis is how bad it is and how it doesn't work and it partially works. And the most important thing is the vision a patient sees of themselves. And, you know, unfortunately, when a doctor gives a prognosis, oh, you have 3 months to live, unfortunately it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, as opposed to, wait, what is there out there for me to cure myself? And I personally have seen people completely transform their mental, emotional, spiritual state into believing a victory. And the most important thing I tell people all the time when I see patients is you become what you think about most of the time. So your cells are listening to your thoughts 24/7. And we have about 25,000 plus thoughts a day. And we're living in our subconscious. And that subconscious is from what happened in utero to now. And if those subconscious thoughts are denigrating and negative and self-sabotaging, then that's what we're doing to ourselves each and every day, every single second of every day. So all of us need to be thinking about consciously what our thoughts are every single day. And that's why when we see a patient, we give them healing affirmations. It's affirmations on affirmations of healing that they say 3 times a day. Then we always do emotional work with the patients, because for Jane's situation, she was going through a divorce where her husband abandoned her in the worst of times. And so it's so important that we create a peace, love, and harmony with each and every person on the earth. And because life is too short, we're given, so many seconds, minutes, and days to live. And we all need to consciously, one, take care of ourselves, because we have to take care of ourselves before we start taking care of other people. And if we aren't whole from our emotional, mental, spiritual state to our physical state, it just doesn't work. And so much, you said it's a buzzword. Yes, it is, because in the literature they're saying that how much trauma and drama, how it affects our being and our physical well-being. And in fact, the literature says that a lot of illness is related to stress and the mess in our lives. And trust me, every one of us has it. It's not like not any of us are exempt from the process, but it's like, what are we going to do mindful today to change our thoughts and how we respond to life? And I know that Jane worked on it. I think she was doing great. And when she went to go get divorced, and I don't think it was a favorable experience, and went home, we spent many, many visits like, okay, Jane, tell me, what is your roadblock? And she did the emotional piece here. And I think it just got the best of her.
Yeah, I think so too. The thing that I saw the most from Jane's perspective, was just the negative power of bitterness in like the lack of reconciliation,
Right.
And forgiveness. And I've heard that bitterness and unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. You hear that, and
Yes.
And I think that plays a really major role in healing, especially on the physical side of things. Because you think about it, when you're walking around, you're holding a grudge, or you're angry, or you're hurt, or you have trauma, and it pops into your mind, like what happens. Like, I find myself with a physical response of, I get tense, or I get the cold chills, or I get angry, and it's like, that person's not around to see that or to experience that. Guess who it's damaging? Like,
Right.
It's damaging me.
That's right.
And I'm a relatively healthy, 34-year-old male, and like, I can't imagine just the amount of physical response that comes from bitterness and the lack of reconciliation in someone whose immune system is already fighting a massive battle, and then now they're fighting another battle emotionally as well.
Right.
So I think just the power of forgiveness, and of letting things go, because those things manifest themselves, I think, physically in our bodies.
Yes, there's so much written on that, and I talk about that in my book. And there was a very famous German oncologist, and he related cancers to a certain emotion, like breast, in this case, is unrest in your nest. And so, and all the other cancers have an emotional component. And you mentioned the fact that, people get physiological imbalances. They can have elevated blood sugar levels, elevated blood pressure. Heart attack has a lot to do with stress. Every disease has an emotional component. And so much of medicine today, though, they don't even address that part. And we feel here that that's probably one of the most important parts of how a patient is directing their healing, is what is going on an emotional, spiritual level. And we see the patients who have this, I'm going to do this, I'm invincible, they're forever positive. Those are the patients that do well. And the patients who are negative and sabotage and themselves and don't get rid of those unfavorable emotional conflicts that they've had in their life, because nobody's parents are perfect, nobody's brothers and sisters are perfect, no situation is perfect, but you have to learn how to resolve that unfavorable situation into a favorable energy in your body.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then you and I spoke about this a little bit earlier too. It's like, emotional healing is not just like like a medicine that you take for the duration of your time of having cancer.
Right.
And I think, we saw a little bit of that with Jane, where she was able to work through all of that during those 10 weeks. And then you said, hey, we still have work to do, we still have stuff to get done, we still have to do these things, and then she leaves and starts to ignore those pieces of her journey.
Right.
And guess what happens? Like, the physical
It
manifestation, they come right back around. So, it's like, it's not just, just a protocol that we do while we're sick,
Right.
but it's a lifestyle.
It's a decision, and it's an intentional decision that we all have to execute every day. And like you said, it's not like you just do it for a month or 2 or 3. It's every day, and there's no finish line to health. It's an ongoing thing, and everybody has the same things.
For sure.
And everybody's got to sleep and drink water and eat the foods that nourish and heal their bodies and move their bodies and deal with stress. Everyone does. Don't think that anyone's exempt from this process.
For sure.
We have to honor the natural laws and rules of our body. So
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on too, like, I don't want to paint Jane on this negative light of like, well, she died because she had negative thoughts.
Right. Exactly.
Like, because in my mind, I think that Jane was probably one of the more positive people I think that we've probably known, in our lives, especially as it pertains to this. So what do you think? I'm trying to think how to ask this question. How do you think that somebody who has cancer and they're working towards that healing, how do you think that they can continue on past a no evidence of disease from an emotional level?
Right.
Do you think it's the healing affirmation still? Do you think it's what, like?
Well, I think it's a little bit of everything. I think all of us need like a quarterback with our emotional, spiritual hub, and we have several staff that do that here. And I think on an ongoing basis, personally, what I personally do is I start my day with affirmations, okay? And I'm 66 years of age. Okay, you think I haven't had curveballs and detours? I've had plenty of them. I've overcome lots of medical issues. I've, worked every day of my life pretty much since I was probably 15 years of age. I love my work though, even though it can be difficult at times. No, actually every day. And but I have to live my life in affirmations personally, okay? Yes, I listen to Solfeggio frequencies. I do almost daily, and I do the affirmations. I have done lots of emotional work. I did EVOX by 3 different practitioners. I had a life coach who was a spiritual life coach, and that helped me overcome many, many, many different obstacles that I had in my life. And because I married someone that I shouldn't have married the first time, and then realized why I did that, and then now I've been married for over 20 years this time. So we all have it, all of us have it, and it's just how much we have to decide, okay, how we're going to live, because we can't be a victim. And it's not the only thing in health, you guys. Like Mitch was saying, when we look at a patient, we're looking at their living environment, okay? We live in a world today that's unfavorable, okay? With air pollution, water pollution, food pollution, EMF pollution, heavy metals, etc. So unfortunately, 50 years ago, we didn't have the disease we have today, right? And so we've got to take everything into consideration when we're looking at the entire beautiful miracle that we all enjoy every day. And we've got to sort it all out. And, but it starts first and foremost, okay, how are we going to program ourselves and think today? And then how do we execute our daily life? Or they say we spend about $4.1 trillion on healthcare today, and they said 90% is what we eat in our lifestyle. And lifestyle means it's an all-encompassing situation. And so we all need to focus on, how are we living each and every day, and are we doing our best, and partner with somebody who you trust, whether it's a health coach, an integrative doctor, someone, so you can optimize yourself the best way possible. Because today, cancer is like 1 in 2, and heart disease is still the number one cause of death, and cancer is 1 in 2 people and growing. And what we've seen is an incredible increase in young people. I think, having Jane was one of the young people that we started showing the trends and changes. And my whole thing is prevention is priceless, and the cure for cancer is prevention. And so, all of us need to take inventory of our life and say, okay, health has to be our most important value, because everything who you are and what you do in your life is related to your health. And health is, from the top down.
Yeah. So do you think that even hope is a preventative measure?
Yes. Well, you have to have something to look forward to. And they say, I was listening to a doctor who's 107 years old, and she says, I have a purpose and a passion every day. And we all have to have a purpose and a passion every day, something to look forward to every single day. And so, and we've got to have hope all the time. I mean, all the time, right?
Yeah.
And everything that we do, whatever it is, with ourselves, our professional, our family, our children, everything, we've got to have that. Hope is something that you're looking, forward to, and it's something is going to happen.
For sure. Yeah, that's really good stuff there. Yeah, hope as a preventative measure is not something that I thought about before, but as you were talking about it does make sense. And what it brings to mind for me is, those people who work, 40 years in a factory or whatever, and then they go retire, and they're dead in 5 years,
right.
Because they don't know what to do with themselves
right.
anymore. They don't have a purpose, they don't have a mission. You see this a lot with veterans that come out of the military. They don't have that community that they used to have,
right.
And they end up either committing suicide, or they go down the wrong, destructive path because of the lack of purpose of a mission. So that element of it, I think, is just such a huge piece that I think all of us need here.
Right, we do, and we have to be reminded, and we have to do some soul searching and say, what is my purpose and passion each and every day?
Totally. And I think we saw this obviously in Jane's, in Jane's audition. And I think there are two, obviously the two quotes that the one that you see the most is, you can't wait until life isn't hard anymore before you decide to be happy. And that's the one that many people have really, latched onto, because I think that within a sort of a victim mentality that can, tend to be seen, in many people, they're waiting for the right moment, just the perfect convergence of the time and the place and the people, and then they're finally going to be happy. And it's not. It's a decision.
Every day.
Every single day.
Right.
That I'm going to do this.
And I have two, cardinal rules I tell patients is I tell people, you can't become your problem. You can't own your problem. Everything's a learning episode to help yourself and help someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It sounds a lot like she got these from you, because it's exactly what it is. That she wasn't identifying. She's not
right.
like, I'm a breast cancer patient. No, like
you don't want to become your label.
No,
right.
You don't want to do it. And then you also need to make a decision to own your day, to own your life, to own what you're doing. Instead of just letting your day happen to you, and your cancer happen to you, and your treatment happen to you, and your hope happen to you. It doesn't work. It's a decision that needs to be made.
Right.
So I guess from a Nightbirde perspective, and then I think we'll get to some Q&A here as well, there's a handful of things. If you want to get involved or engaged in what we're doing here with the Nightbirde Foundation, we're giving gifts of hope to women that are going through breast cancer. So if you'd love to sponsor a woman, you can get on our website and you can do that. There's an ability to add a note. We write a handwritten note to every woman that goes in every one of these boxes. And we want it to be personal, because it's very difficult to feel alone sitting in a chemo chair, sitting in treatment, being hooked up to an IV. I mean, like, I can't imagine. It was miserable enough for Jane to have to, go through the treatments that she was going through, with us next to her, let alone sitting in here by herself with no help and no support and just like nobody loving her or caring for her. So what we want to do is we want to bring a little bit of that hope into their lives. And then so a gift of hope is $100 to sponsor a woman, but a portion of that $100 goes into a treatment fund to be able to give grants to women that are going through breast cancer as well. And we partner with Dr. Connealy here at the Cancer Center for Healing to be able to provide additional funds to young women that are walking through their breast cancer journey, because again, Jane survived as long as she did because of the generosity of thousands of people all the way around the world, and like we would be remiss for us not to continue to do the exact same thing for women that are sitting in a similar situation as they are. But at the end of the day, like, treatments are great and the money spent on treatments is great, but like if you don't have hope, you can do as many treatments as you want. You can do as many as you want, and without it, you're not going to make it through. So that's what we want to do, is we want to take that hope, we want to give it to other people, and we want them to know that there's so much more than the bad things that have happened to them, and they can take the choice today, they can make the decision today to take control of their health and can take control of their lives.
Right, and we all have to cooperate and collaborate together to create a better world. We really do. And I know, Mitch, you're really dedicated to that, and that's what I love, and we are dedicated to transforming the future of health and humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And it's an honor to partner with you guys, and it was an honor to be a part of this place.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, new patient inquiries, obviously. I'll let you handle this side.
Well, you can read Cancer Center for Healing. The telephone's there, 949-858-14673, HOPE. And it's cancercenterforhealing.com. And then the Perfectly Healthy store is right there with the Center for New Medicine. Let's say you want to be human optimized, you want to prevent, you have a chronic condition, maybe diabetes, autoimmune, general sense of, you don't feel well. That's what Center for New Medicine is.
Thank you so much for this time. Let's see, we have a couple people on the chat and a Q&A, so let me just look at the chat real quick. First question, what's the difference between regular chemo and low-dose chemo?
Right, so regular chemo is the typical dose-dense chemo that they would normally administer according to NCCN guidelines. And low dose, which is fractionated chemotherapy, is using insulin because cancer cells like sugar. So they have insulin-like growth factors on the membrane. And so you give insulin to sensitize them to take up the chemo. So you give insulin to the patient, you bring the blood sugar down to what they call the therapeutic moment, which is about 40, give or take. And then you give the chemo IV 10% of a normal dose. So basically the cancer cells take up the chemo and preserving normal cells. And then of course we add many natural things so that we preserve the cells. And then we have the collateral support treatments and oral and intravenous and or modalities that we add so that the patient experiences a low side effect profile.
Yeah, I think that what was so compelling to me about that type of chemotherapy was, and maybe you can speak to this, but it seems like chemo is predicated upon the idea that you're just destroying everything.
Correct.
And then hoping that you get enough cancer in the process without killing the rest of the body through that whole deal. But with the fractionated, it seemed like, I saw it at least in Jane's case, the side effects were
diminished.
Way diminished.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I think even the results, after 10 weeks it was really night and day.
Yeah, it was. It was a complete, transition from being very ill in a wheelchair to this vibrant, exuberant woman who was traveling.
Yeah, she was traveling for sure.
So,
all right, we have one more question. This might be a little too specific, but we'll see.
This is about how will you kill tumors for patients with leiomyosarcoma. Well, leiomyosarcoma is a very special cancer. Sarcoma is a tumor of muscle and bone, and this is lyo, which is related to the uterus, and these are commonly found in the uterus. And unfortunately, chemotherapy doesn't really work successfully on leiomyosarcoma, and radiation doesn't work. So you've got to use some other modalities and other IV treatments for leiomyosarcoma other than chemotherapy and radiation.
Gotcha. What's the name of the test for circulating cancer cells?
Yeah, so the patient asks, what is the name of the test for circulating cancer cells? It's actually circulating tumor cells. There's a lab called RGCC that started in Greece and Switzerland. probably over 20 years ago. There is another lab called DATAR, DATAR, which is relatively new here in the United States. And so those two labs seem to be the best for that kind of testing.
Excellent. And then is cancer in a younger person more lethal?
Well, cancer in a younger person, because their DNA is rapidly dividing, it is more dangerous and more aggressive, but that doesn't mean that you can't, fix a cancer in a younger person. You just have to take all the precautions. And I always tell my younger patients, look, that's why we have to have all these healing pathways. We can't just rely on surgery, chemo, and radiation. We have to also create all these other healing pathways so that we make sure that we're taking care of the patient with the problem, not the problem of the patient. And I think in the conventional world, they just treat pretty much everyone the same. And here we really see that younger patients need to be watched very diligently and also have all these. So that's why we use repurposed drugs, and that's why we use IV vitamin C and IV curcumin and hyperthermia and all these other modalities and things that the patients take orally. So we do all these other things so that we ensure that patients have as many healing pathways as possible.
Just to follow up on that, does metabolism play a factor in that? Like when you're younger, your metabolism tends to be
exactly. You can kind of relate it to that. It's that the cells are rapidly dividing more than someone who's 65 years of age.
Okay.
So that's the only beauty of being older, is that cancer cells are slower, and cancer is usually slower in a person who's older.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing. Because you'd think that the younger person would have a stronger immune system, faster
Well,
healing rate.
they're typically healthier. They usually don't have diabetes. They don't have high blood pressure. They usually don't have chronic medical conditions because they haven't lived long enough. And so usually, I always used to say that patients had a warranty until they're 40, and then 40 to 60, 60, the warranty's over. But now, because of the increase in young people, I can't say that anymore. And I think that we really all, from beginning of time of a child, as soon as they're born, is really, really focused on creating the best health possible.
Totally.
Patient asks, what are your thoughts on oral chemo pill and capecitabine? Well, medications can be an incredible tool to get to the other side of a scan of no evidence of disease. So I always tell people, we do all kinds of testing to see what could be the best drug and what are the mutations of the cancer. And so we will create the best treatment plan, possibly using drugs, but again, all the other things that you need to do to change the terrain that the cancer came in.
Let's see. Hormone therapy treating high estrogen receptor?
Right. So usually if a patient's cancer is hormone positive, most common is estrogen receptor positive. And so we will use hormone blockers. And in young women, we use tamoxifen usually if they're premenopausal. And if they're in menopause, we usually use what they call AI inhibitors, and so aromatase inhibitors. So that's something like anastrozole or letrozole. And we do natural hormone blockers also. And so it can be a very important pathway to address in each patient. And so again, that's just one of 100 things that you might be addressing in a patient. And estrogen receptor positivity is very important because we know those cancers can be a very potential mechanism of beating the cancer.
And I think the last question here, so coming up on time, any CTC testing after osteosarcoma? Does IV vitamin C help?
Yes, it says yes, you can check for circulating tumor cells for osteosarcoma. And since osteosarcoma does not respond favorably to chemo and radiation, I highly recommend you get that test. IV vitamin C is one of many things that help treat and block, the pathways to cancer. So.
Awesome. Anything else that you want to?
Well, we can't say enough. First of all, thank you all for being a part of this, this special expose of Jane, and because her spirit and her soul lives on, and so many people met Jane here, and I know it touched everyone's hearts here at the clinic and all the patients that were here, and that every individual is an original, and so everybody's treatment won't look the same, and so we have to treat each person with their particular situation, but we need to address the entire biological system of a patient. We can't just treat the cancer. We must treat the patient. Cancer takes 10 plus or minus years to develop, so that means we have lots of opportunity to prevent cancer. And I would encourage everyone to take inventory of their health from head to toe and say, have I achieved, optimal health, and what are all the things I can do? And there's a famous book, Radical Remission, and there's another book that the author wrote, I forget what the name of it, but 8 out of the 10 things were patients that did on their own. And so not from what their doctor told them, but 8 of them were the self-care. And we forget. I met a beautiful patient this week, and she has 3 children, and she has a diagnosis of thyroid cancer, and she had her thyroid removed, and she's never felt well since she had the thyroid removed. And she went to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, this is just the way you have to live. Well, no, that isn't the right answer. You don't just have to live horrible at 42 years of age. And so she said, she told her husband, I'm going to California for 2 weeks to get well, and because I have to be the best mother for my children, and I have to take care of myself and get my health in the most optimal state. And all the patients coming in today is, I've got to figure out how I never get cancer again.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's really amazing that the work that you're doing here, and just the focus on the whole thing, I think is really the takeaway for me is just that just because I'm 34 and in decent shape and don't feel horrible all the time doesn't mean that I can't take steps on my emotional health, my spiritual health, me being forgiving and not holding on to bitterness, but also environmental factors and being conscious on what I eat and what I put myself around. And then even instilling that in my kids, like I hope my kids have the same story as you of eating sauerkraut and bone marrow, before it was cool, so that they can live a long, healthy.
You're doing that.
They are. They eat a lot of kimchi. I'll tell you that.
Okay, good.
A lot of kimchi.
Well,
sure.
You learned a lot,
I did.
And your family learned a lot through this whole process. Because I always tell all the patients, this isn't just about you. This is about your whole family.
For sure. And it's funny you say that. Because my mom and dad and my family, they would never touch an organic vegetable because it's overpriced and it's a scam, it's a scam, or whatever. And now after this whole process and journey with Jane, I don't think we've ever ate healthier in our entire lives, And it's not for any other reason than knowing that, hey, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to live long and healthy and fulfilling lives, not just so we can, be part of the Century Club or whatever, but because we want to impact the world and we want to change lives and we want to have a vision for others, and we can't help other people if we're sick in bed.
That's right. And I always tell people, if you don't have your health, you can't be the best person. You can't be the best mommy, the best sister, the best friend, the best employee, the best member of our community, and we're all interconnected, and we all have to help each other be the best version of ourselves.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really love being here.
Well, thank you so much for
being
being
here. Oh my goodness.
And when I see of you, I just think of Jane. I remember that first day when you guys came here, and you were just an amazing support for Jane.
Definitely. Well, if you want to do anything Nightbirde Foundation related, go to nightbirdefoundation.org. If you want to donate directly to our foundation to help a woman here with their cancer treatments, you can go that route. If you want to send a gift of hope to someone here or really anywhere in the world, I send these to France and Germany and South Africa and the Philippines and Malaysia. I send them everywhere because there are women literally all over the world that need hope just as much as you and I do. So you can go to nightbirdefoundation.org to do that, and all those details are there. And obviously, if you want a whole health approach to living a long, fulfilling life, the Center for New Medicine is the place to go.
Well, thank you. And thank you guys for being a part of our life journey and inspiring us to do what we get to do each and every day. And share this with all your friends and family and loved ones.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. It was great to be with you.